Hi, my name is Jerry Reed. I've been an Amsoil dealer for many years now. And I'd just like to share with you an article that was written in 1976 in Popular Science magazine. It was the longest, and is the longest article Popular Science has ever written on any one subject. This is the cover of a Popular Science magazine that was published in 1976. And as you can see, the cover is stating as the headline, "The Debate Over Synthetic Oil," and it's showing a can of Mobil 1 being poured. And they offer several questions about synthetic oil. The interesting thing about this article is that it was 11 pages long. It's the longest article Popular Science has ever written on any one subject up till then and since then. And they offered several questions. And one of the questions was, better lubrication, more miles per gallon, easier zero weather starts, higher horsepower, 25,000 mile oil change, less wear? Those are the questions posed in this article. One of the most interesting pages in this article out of Popular Science, by the way, this was April of 1976, was this interview with the fellow pictured here pulling the dipstick on that engine. His name is Ray Potter. Ray was head of the lubrication lab in Detroit at Ford in the mid-60s. And someone brought him some synthetic oil to play with in the engines and on the dynamometers in the lab. And they ran the oil in the engines. And the standard at that time was to run an oil 84 hours in a sequence of high RPMs and temperatures and so forth, and then evaluate the condition of the oil. And usually by the end of that test, petroleum oil would be in pretty bad shape. Well, he ran the test, and he ran the test, and he ran the test. He ran the test a total of 5 times, and the oil still remained in usable condition. Well, Ray then took it and put it in his own personal vehicle, which was a 65 Lincoln. And over the next 4 years, he drove that Lincoln 100,000 miles. And the picture shows him pulling the dipstick on a Lincoln, 1965 Lincoln, with 100,000 miles without an oil change. At the end of the test, and what he did during the test was, he would change the filter, and he would also take oil samples because he had the lab there, and they would evaluate the oil. And the oil was still good, and still good, and still good. So at 100,000, they finally took the car into the Ford lab, pulled the engine out, bench stripped the engine, and mic'd the parts. And there was so little wear on those parts that they would have qualified to be used online in brand new engines. There was also no sludge, gum, or varnish buildup inside that engine. Ray then left Ford and became a worldwide consultant on synthetic lubrication. He was so fascinated with the results. But also on this same page, there's a comment by a fellow by the name of Smokey Unick. Well, back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, Smokey had a garage down at Daytona. And Smokey was a well-known mechanic. He wrote a column in Popular Science called Smokey Says, where people would write in questions and he would answer them. And they interviewed Smokey on the same page, and Smokey tells about running synthetic oil in his 1974 in his race car at, I think it was at Daytona. Now they all warned him that it wouldn't work, that the engine wouldn't hold up, and that it would eventually break down. And so, but Smokey ran the engine anyway, and ran the whole race. Now normally back then, when you ran a race like that, at the end of the race you rebuilt the engine. Well, the engine was still in excellent condition, had virtually no wear. So that was Smokey's first experience with it. Smokey also wrote a book in 1983 called Power Secrets. And in Chapter 7 on lubrication and filtration, lubricating oils it was, the Chapter 7, Smokey wrote, "As far as I'm concerned, mineral-based lubricating oils are about as antiquated as the Model T." He went on to say, "I would buy and use a synthesized polyester-based engine oil even if I had to pay $10 a quart or more for it." That was in 1963. Synthesized oils have been around for a long time. We first started testing synthetics over 30 years ago, so now that puts it back in the 50s. And at that time we had to pay as much as $37 a quart for the stuff. But I quickly became convinced that a good synthesized oil has better lubricity, increased resistance to high-low temperature breakdown, and much better load carrying capabilities than any mineral oil in existence. Well, that was Smokey Unick, and Smokey was interviewed in this article also. And let's go back to the questions we were talking about. The first question posed was, better lubrication? Well, pretty obvious that it offers much, much better lubrication. Testified by the experience that Ray Potter had. There's been the mountains of other evidence through the years about the benefits of using a synthetic oil. Smokey Unick backed it up. Most of your top race drivers today, of course, all use synthetic oil. None of them are using petroleum. So there's not much question that if you could run an engine 100,000 miles without an oil change and the parts could be used in brand new engines, that synthetic oil certainly has better lubrication. More miles per gallon. Well, the government backs that up by saying that you should see a change of miles per gallon of between 3 and 5%. And again, that is enough to actually cancel out the cost of a good synthetic oil if it's formulated for the long drain. Easier cold weather starting. Well, in cold weather, we know that petroleum oil thickens, and what happens is the wax crystals in it start to solidify and the oil thickens and thickens. And when you get into real cold weather, very difficult to start an engine in sub-zero weather. So that's a big benefit is our oil pours at between 50 and 60 below zero, so you don't have to worry about that. Higher horsepower. Well, that's been proven over and over again. If you take an engine that's been running petroleum oil and you do a compression check on it, and then change it to a synthetic and then run it a little while and go back and do the compression check, you will find usually anywhere from a 5 to 10% increase in compression. Well, that attributes to higher horsepower output. The engine is tighter and produces more horsepower. And on dynamometers, that's been demonstrated over and over again. 25,000 mile oil change. Well, AMSOIL's been doing 25,000 mile oil drains, warranted since 1972. Now certainly if that oil wouldn't go 25,000 miles in 72, by the end of 73, AMSOIL would have been history. And they're not going to warranty this oil at 25 if it's only capable of doing 26 or 27,000. It's actually capable of going further. They've built themselves a nice cushion there. Less wear, well again, we go back to Ray Potter, we go to Smokey Unick, we go to a lot of other demonstrations of engines running many times longer than they were ever designed to do with petroleum. And if you're interested in a copy of this article, I'd be glad to email you one. I have them I have it scanned in. And if you contact me at my website at www.synthoils.com, I'll be glad to email you a copy of this article. Thanks for taking the time to listen.